Many men spend years chasing a feeling they think only a woman can give them: peace, worth, certainty. Then one day they realize the cage was never love, it was fear. Fear of being alone, of not being enough, of starting over. This speech reaches that exact moment when the heart gets tired of games and the mind begins to wake up. If you've ever lost sleep over someone who treated your loyalty like weakness, you'll feel these words in your bones. Stay till the end, because the final truth may change how you see relationships forever. Comment your location where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more life-changing insights. Men have been taught, often without realizing it, that their value is something a woman confirms. They grow up absorbing the idea that being chosen means they are finally enough, that receiving her attention proves they matter, that her presence stabilizes their identity. This is not romance, it is conditioning. Power moves toward the person whose approval you need to survive emotionally. When a man wakes up to this mechanism, he begins to see that dependence disguises itself as love. The compliments feel like oxygen, the messages feel like rescue, and suddenly one person holds the switch to his mood. Understanding this is the first crack in the wall. Psychologically, validation works like a quiet contract. If your sense of worth rises when she is warm and collapses when she is distant, you are not relating. You are regulating yourself through another human being. That is a fragile architecture for any adult life. Often reminds listeners that self-concept cannot be outsourced. A man who borrows confidence will always pay interest in anxiety. He will overinterpret small changes, tolerate disrespect, and negotiate boundaries that should never be discussed. The truth is uncomfortable. The need for approval makes intelligent men behave like frightened boys. There is also a philosophical layer here. Ancient thinkers argued that freedom begins with ownership of the inner world. If dignity lives outside you, you are a guest in your own life. Women are not villains in this story. The structure is the problem. Society tells men to prove, perform, compete for affection, and they confuse the chase with destiny. But attraction was meant to meet a complete person, not assemble one. When you build value through discipline, knowledge, health, and purpose, relationships stop being auditions. You meet a woman as an equal, not as a verdict. Authoritative confidence is different from arrogance. It is calm awareness that you remain worthy whether someone stays or leaves. Once this lesson is learned, manipulation loses its soil. Guilt trips cannot grow where self-respect is rooted. Mixed signals cannot confuse a mind that does not beg. You begin to enjoy connection instead of fearing its withdrawal. Au pair style emphasizes that true masculinity is centered, observant, emotionally literate. The man who knows his value can admire a woman deeply and still walk away from what harms him. That dual capacity is real power. Imagine the shift this creates. You no longer check your phone to discover who you are today. You no longer allow beauty to excuse behavior. You stop asking permission to feel confident. Women sense this immediately because energy changes before vocabulary does. The centered man is harder to control and easier to love. His worth is a foundation, not a favor. And when worth is internal, choice becomes authentic. So the first truth is simple yet revolutionary: your value must come from within, not from her approval. Build a life that validates you before any woman tries to. Once you do that, affection becomes an addition to your identity, never its source. A man who knows his value does not lose women. He loses his fear of them, and that is where freedom begins. A man's greatest vulnerability is not that he feels deeply, it's that he has never been taught how to stand inside his feelings without being ruled by them. Manipulation only works where emotion is unmanaged. Attention games, jealousy rituals, the cold pauses between texts, these are not mystical powers women possess. They are psychological tools that activate a reactive nervous system. When you are quick to chase relief instead of slow to examine truth, someone else begins to conduct your inner weather. Jessica Au Pair, like voices, often explain that emotional independence is the ability to keep your self-respect louder than your impulses. It is a skill, not a mood you stumble upon. Think about how easily leverage forms in relationships. The person who can disturb you with silence controls the conversation without saying a word. The one who can trigger guilt makes you negotiate what should be non-negotiable. Honesty, loyalty, basic courtesy. From an intellectual standpoint, this resembles conditioning theory: reward the behavior you want, punish the behavior you don't, and soon an adult is performing for crumbs of stability. Emotional independence interrupts that cycle because it changes the meaning of reward and punishment. Warmth from a woman becomes something you appreciate, not something you require to feel alive. There's a philosophical dignity to this as well. Freedom has always meant mastery of the self before mastery of the world. If a beautiful face can push you into panic, how powerful are you really? Independence does not ask men to become stone, it asks them to become conscious. You can love a woman and still refuse to be dragged by fear of losing her. You can desire connection and still choose distance from disrespect. That balance is what mature strength sounds like. Au pair approach reminds listeners that calm boundaries communicate more authority than angry speeches ever will. Emotionally dependent men confuse intensity with devotion. They believe suffering proves commitment, that tolerating confusion demonstrates love. But psychologically, suffering simply proves you have not learned to regulate your own worth. The independent man observes first. He asks, "What is actually happening?" Not "What am I terrified might happen?" He understands that feelings are information passing through him, not commandments written about him. Once you see emotion as a guest rather than a landlord, the dramatic tactics lose their stage. Nobody can threaten you with withdrawal when you already carry your peace in your pocket. And notice the social illusion behind the word power. Women never had supernatural control, men donated it through reaction. The moment you respond instead of chasing, the dynamic resets. Respect returns to its proper size. You stop apologizing for expectations that protect your mental health. Emotional independence makes you harder to manipulate and far more capable of genuine partnership. It creates a man who can be trusted with love because he is not desperate for it. So, when key point 2 says emotional independence destroys manipulation, it is pointing to a deeper architecture of adulthood. Build routines that steady your mind. Fitness, meaningful work, honest friendships, time away from constant reassurance. These are not accessories, they are psychological armor. Once those pillars exist, relationships become conversations between two free people instead of contests for control. Master your emotions before you ask anyone to master loving you, because the man who cannot be pulled by fear can finally be guided by truth, and truth is the only voice worth following into action. Purpose has a way of reorganizing a man from the inside out. When you don't know where you are going, attraction becomes a compass you borrow from women. You meet someone exciting and suddenly her smile feels like direction, her interest feels like a mission. And without noticing, you begin orbiting a person instead of building a life. The deeper truth is that women feel powerful only when they are placed at the top of a man's hierarchy. The moment purpose outranks attraction, the entire psychological map changes. You stop asking, "How do I keep her?" and start asking, "How do I grow myself?" Intellectually, this is about motivational architecture. Human beings chase what they worship. If pleasure is your highest value, you will serve whoever provides it. Beauty, attention, emotional intensity, these become currencies that purchase your behavior. Philosophers have warned about this for centuries. That desire without discipline turns adults into followers of appetite. A man guided by purpose is guided by a longer timeline. He measures choices by whether they build his character, his health, his contribution to the world. That lens makes short-term excitement lose its authority. You can admire a woman deeply and still refuse to make her your North Star. Psychology explains the same story in different vocabulary. Dopamine is persuasive, but it is not wise. When a man has goals that matter, fitness he protects, work he respects, principles he will not dilute, his nervous system becomes less bribable. He no longer abandons routine because someone attractive entered the room. Jessica O'Pair, like thinking, often tells men that centered purpose creates calm charisma. Women are drawn to men who are moving, not to men who are begging to be paused with them. Growth produces an energy that cannot be faked because it is backed by structure. Consider how relationships improve when purpose leads. You become selective instead of clingy. You listen to behavior instead of flattering words. You notice that attraction should fit into your life, not replace it. The man with vision does not panic over competition because he is not competing for identity anymore. He understands that loss is survivable and stagnation is not. That distinction is everything. Women never lost magic, men simply discovered meaning. Society sells a confusing myth that a real man must chase women to prove he is alive. But the authoritative truth is reversed: a real man builds, and women decide to join what is being built. When you place purpose above attraction, you are not declaring war on women. You are declaring responsibility for yourself. You become a man who can love without surrendering direction, desire without abandoning boundaries, commit without dissolving into fear. That balance is what adulthood looks like in motion. So, key point 3: purpose outranks attraction, is the bridge that connects freedom of the inner world with stability of relationships. Protect the habits that create you. Let admiration be a passenger, never the driver. Build a life so meaningful that attention becomes a choice you welcome, not a drug you need. If you want to be powerful in love, become devoted to purpose first. Because the man who has something to live for will never be controlled by someone he is merely excited by, and that is a truth worth acting on today.